We are continuing to cover major breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ from the world of golf. The PGA and European Tours have agreed to merge with Saudi-backed rival LIV Golf. Now, the agreement ends all pending litigation between the parties, and it forms a new collectively owned and as yet unnamed entity. In a joint announcement, the three organizations said they will cooperate on a process to allow current LIV players, a roster which includes the likes of Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, to reapply for PGA Tour membership after the 2023 season. The tours will also maintain separate oversight, but create cohesive schedules. Here's what PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan had to say after 2 years of disruption and distraction. This is an historic day for the game that we all know and love. This transformational partnership recognizes the immeasurable strength of the PGA Tour's history, legacy, and pro-competitive model, and combines with it the DP World Tour and LIV. So some quick facts for you. Players can reapply for PGA Tour membership after the 2023 season. Separate event oversight, but they will create the cohesive schedules, and the agreement includes the European PGA Tour. And perhaps most importantly, the deal ends all pending litigation between the two tours. Let's bring in golf analyst Doug Bell and First Cut podcast host Rick Gehman for more on this. Doug, I'll go to you first here. I mean, what's your reaction to this historic day for the PGA?
Well, Jeremy, it's earthquake news, right? A peace treaty has been formed between the PGA Tour, LIV Golf, and the DP World Tour. And that means all the litigation that has been going on and that has been threatened is now gone away. And the PGA Tour does not have to open their books as far as any sort of legal entanglement. LIV Golf has been really on the slow push for this legal opposition because they do not want to open their books as well. And obviously the DP World Tour, they're being sued by some of the players now in LIV Golf. So listen, all that goes away, and that is a big deal. In the last half hour leading up to this conversation, I've talked to three players on the PGA Tour. All three were completely caught off guard. I read them the press release. They were flabbergasted. They were shocked because as I read the press release, names that I was mentioning in the press release, all three were saying, wait a minute, I saw some of those people at the Charles Schwab Challenge. I saw some of those people last week at Muirfield Village, and none of them said anything about this story breaking. So again, for the players, they were caught completely off guard. But if you look at it sensibly, again, this peace treaty has been formed. No more litigation between the three tours. The PGA Tour will still have controlling interest in all three. LIV Golf, even though they are hemorrhaging money, nobody is really paying any attention to them. They're not going away. And so the PGA Tour said, okay, let's all join forces. I think the team concept, even though it's somewhat confusing, I think that is something that the PGA Tour will jump on. And again, this is all going to happen after the playoffs, after the Tour Championship. 2024 in the world of golf will look completely different. And I don't think suddenly Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson are going to start playing a whole bunch of PGA Tour events. That's not going to happen, but they will be given the opportunity to play select PGA Tour events. For example, last week at the Memorial, Jack Nicklaus's tournament. Next year in 2024, I believe Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Reed, they'll be playing those kind of events while they'll still be playing select events on the LIV Tour. A schedule has to be formed. Again, the DP World Tour happens the same week. Their events as a PGA Tour event. And I think LIV will have some events that'll also be happening at the same time. And I think when a guy like Jay Monahan says it's going to help the game of golf, I think ultimately it will. There'll be more focus on the game of golf than ever before in 2024. So while this is shocking, it is also, I believe, a real positive for the game of professional golf.
Jay Monahan, correct that this is a historic moment in the game of golf, but unfortunately, I'm not sure he's on the right side of history. At least the player feedback right now is pretty scathing. Doug mentioned it. These guys have been completely blindsided by this merger, and they are angry. And quite frankly, they probably have a right to be angry. For the last 2 years, they have stuck their neck out for the PGA Tour. Many of them have turned down hundreds of millions of dollars to go and play on LIV Golf. And now they are finding out the news that they are merging with the Public Investment Fund, the PIF, the financial arm of the Saudi Arabian government. They're finding out on Twitter. And just like everybody else, Greg Norman found out about it moments before the announcement was made on CNBC. This is a close-knit group that was able to come together to an agreement with essentially zero leaks along the way. And for a player-run organization like the PGA Tour they're looking around saying, do we really run this organization? Because it doesn't feel that way. And now Jay Monahan is going to have an open players meeting at the RBC Canadian Open today. And I imagine there are going to be lots of questions that he may or may not have the answers to. But the initial feedback from the tour players, very negative.
Yeah, it seems that there's a disconnect here based on what we're seeing on social media, because the players, as you mentioned, Doug, not very happy. A lot of tweets about this. And when we were talking to Michael Breed earlier, he said one word that kind of came out of his mouth is that there was betrayal here, that he felt a little bit of betrayal because we were forced to choose between LIV and the PGA, and now they're kind of merging. So, Doug, when you look at this situation now, you have so many high-paid golfers playing, big-name golfers playing on the LIV Tour. I mean, if they're together but a little bit separate, I'm curious as to what your thoughts would be on how this money's going to work out, because if some of these PGA Tour players are a little bit miffed, could they be looking at perhaps a switch over to LIV and playing in those events for bigger purses and more money?
Well, Jeremy, I don't think that's going to happen. Again, the players that I spoke with just moments ago, all three said, wait a minute, so these guys got their money and now they're going to be allowed back on the PGA Tour. Again, we don't know the specifics, but it does look like those players who made the jump will benefit greatly from a financial standpoint. I don't think there's any question about that. But again, LIV will still play their events, and I believe those players who made that jump will continue to play that schedule, adding a few cherry-picked events on the PGA Tour. And that's why the players currently on the PGA Tour are very, very emotional and very, very upset, and you can understand that, right? But I do believe these backroom negotiations all happened because of the legal entanglements that were about to unfold. And the PGA Tour, LIV Golf, the DP World Tour, they did not want to go into court and have to open up all the books and have everybody take a microscopic look at every bottom line. So again, smart move from a financial standpoint. There's peace in the game of golf. Yes, the players are very upset right now, certainly on the PGA Tour. But and again, the division now that is formed on the PGA Tour, where you have these elevated events, and starting next year, it was going to be 80 players, potentially no cut. The players who weren't in that top 80 are going to be left out of those big events. Now I think it's going to be even more difficult for the players that are in that 80 to 125 range to get in a lot of these big events, especially if these LIV players are allowed to play in these elevated events as well. So I can understand the emotion on the PGA Tour players. Listen, the guys I just spoke to, very, very emotional. But again, the bottom line, Jeremy, it's business. It's let's get the legal process out of the picture. Let's all work together and form this huge business product. The PGA Tour will still control it, but as a player, yeah, they're going to suffer if you're outside that top 80.
Doug is absolutely correct. The reason this happened is, one, money, and that goes into basically not having to go to litigation, not having to open your books, not having to get involved in anything like that. But that's not what the players want to hear, right? Imagine if you are Rory McIlroy or Justin Thomas, who has been run out week after week after week as a punching bag to answer questions, every single presser about LIV Golf, the future of it, go on record, and now you're blindsided by this news. I want to point out a couple of other things. You know, Jay Monahan has been quite strategic over the last 2 years to tie LIV Golf to PIF, the Public Investment Fund, the financial arm of the Saudi Arabian government, to tie them to, honestly, the 9/11 attacks, right? You hear anytime Jay Monahan would address LIV, he would call it the Saudi-backed LIV Golf league in an attempt to remind people where that money is coming from. In a release that was sent to the players a few moments ago, one of the bullet points from Jay Monahan says, PIF will make a financial investment to become a premier corporate partner of the PGA Tour and DP World Tour and other international tours. So the last 2 years of Jay Monahan reminding everyone how dirty this money is and where it's coming from is now happy to be injecting it into the PGA Tour. It's an about face that no one was expecting. I think there's a reason that this was played very close to the vest, because if it would have leaked out and gotten to the players before this, there would have been a riot. I'm not sure that riot is still not coming. But it's a very, very difficult day, and Jay's going to have some answers, some questions to answer.
Yeah, it's one of those, one of those terms that we've heard before, sport washing a little bit, and this kind of rings a little bit, perhaps, of that. Certainly, the about face from Jay Monahan. In terms of the structure, they're still assessing kind of what the structure is going to look like. But Yasir Al-Rumayyan will be the chairman of the new board that they are forming, with Monahan becoming the CEO. So you're going to have two people in very powerful positions that are going to kind of be overseeing things, and the PGA Tour, by extension of this, does maintain its tax-exempt status. To your point, Doug, about the fact that they just don't want to open up the books, does neither tour. Maintaining a tax-exempt status is going to be obviously very good for both. Rick, I want to ask you here a question that we had come up. What does this potentially mean on the course for things like the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup?
Yeah, I suppose I should preface all this by saying we have no idea, right? And there's still a lot to figure out. But I assume that the initial response, or the assumption, is that anybody who left to go play on LIV Golf, if they are going to be essentially welcomed back, or if they are going to be allowed to apply for their membership on the PGA Tour, they will also be welcomed back into things like the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup. If there is a partnership amongst these organizations in the game of golf, and we haven't even gotten to, like, how does Augusta National feel about this? How does the PGA of America feel about this? How does the USGA feel about all of this? There are a lot of governing bodies in the world of golf, but I imagine for Ryder Cup, for President's Cup, maybe there is a creation of another competition. We could imagine, and we have kind of joked on Twitter at times, like a LIV Golf versus PGA Tour competition every couple of years would do massive pay-per-view numbers. That might actually be closer to a reality than we've ever seen before at this point. So the assumption is guys like Brooks Koepka, who have honestly probably played their way back into Ryder Cup contention, I assume it's going to be like nothing ever happened, and he's going to be allowed to participate, and that there could be further creation of these type of team competitions moving forward.
It's certainly going to be interesting, as you mentioned. We still have so many questions that we need answers to. But Doug, I want to ask you something about Tiger Woods here. Let's bring his name into the conversation. He turned down more money than anybody in terms of what LIV was offering to come and join. And I mean, he hasn't played a lot, but what could this merger potentially mean for Tiger Woods? Could we see him a little bit more?
No, I don't think so. I think his days are numbered, certainly, Jeremy. We're not going to see the great Tiger Woods play any more than he physically is capable, and that might be right now 2 or 3 times a year. But again, he and Rory have formed this business partnership that was already a part of the unveiling of the new PGA Tour. So I think that will only enhance what they have proposed, these Monday night made-for-TV propositions involving all sorts of technology and that sort of thing. I think it'll only enhance it, because I believe now you have some bigger names from LIV that'll be involved with that. So, and again, I would be very surprised if Tiger Woods didn't know some of what was unveiled about an hour ago. Something tells me Tiger, Rory, and that power team knew something about it, and I think they were very tight-lipped. I'd be shocked if they were like the regular PGA Tour rank and file, and we're just blown away by this news today. I think they knew before it even broke.
We are 1 meter into a marathon, and I think we're going to find out a lot more over the course of the next couple hours, days, weeks, and months. I want to remind everyone that sport right now is a star-driven entity. We see it in the NBA, we see it in the NFL, and it is true in the world of golf. Remember in Wilmington, when all the top players in the world got together and said, we're going to put a plan together to save the tour, we're going to readjust our schedule, we're going to do this because we have all the power. That power has not changed. When you look at what the repercussions are going to be for the PGA Tour from their membership in the next couple of days, it could be drastic. And Jay Monahan is he's voted into that spot by the players, right? I mean, there is literally a chance that Jay does not survive this, in my opinion, based on the feedback that I have gotten from players on the tour who are ready for a bit of an uprising. So it is still very much a star-driven sport, like most sport is, and there's going to be a lot of things said and discussed and compromised on that I can only fathom, because this was pretty shocking in general.
Well, throughout the day today, I mean, we were going to be starting to tee up the RBC Canadian Open, which is, of course, coming up this week just outside of Toronto. But now the focus is not going to be on the golf there. It's going to be on the reaction to what we've seen. Doug Bell, Rick Gehman joining us here on CBS Sports HQ to recap the monumental news. The PGA Tour and LIV Golf have agreed to merge. In terms of some of the quick facts that we can tell you, players can reapply for PGA Tour membership after the 2023 season. As mentioned, we've got some big names that play LIV: Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau. Separate event oversight, but they're going to create cohesive schedules between the two. The agreement also includes the European PGA Tour, and the deal ends all pending litigation between the tours. You heard Doug Bell mention it. Neither of these tours wanted to open up their books in open court. They're not going to have to do that. All the litigation ends with the merger. And for more on this, boy, oh boy, they are going to be discussing this for a long time. As Rick mentioned, we are a meter into a marathon. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. The guys on the First Cut podcast, led by Rick Gehman, will certainly be looking to try and answer those and get you information. You can download and follow the First Cut wherever you get your podcasts, or you can scan that QR code to listen now.